Hey, welcome to Solved or Unsolved, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Brent, and today we're going to talk about the Keedie cabin murders. That's Keedie murders. Before we get started on that, I'd like to ask you to follow me on social media, Solved or Unsolved, on Instagram and Facebook. Also, check out our website, solvedorunsolved.com. Go around there, navigate around, check it out. Any questions, comments, send me an email and I will respond. Hey, we're going to get started on this one. The Keedie, I'm going to say this funny throughout the entire podcast, but I have a little problem saying that word. The Keedie cabins were in Keedie, California. And it was a thriving business, maybe early 70s, but businesses fell off. So they started in the mid to late 70s, they started renting these places to lower income families. And the Sharp family moved in 1980 to cabin 28. And the Sharp family consisted of the mother, Sue. She had 5 children. Johnny, which was 15. Sheila is 14. Tina is 12. Rick is 10. And Greg is 5. So she has 5 children she's raising by herself. And it was sort of a hard time. Money was tight. They lived off of food stamps and some military benefits that she got from one of her ex-husbands. So everything's tight, but it's a quiet place. It's wooded. There's a stream nearby. They seem to like it there. Life seems to be going pretty good for them, except for some money issues. April the 11th, 1981, you have Dana, with 15-year-old Dana, and his buddy, Dana Wingate. He's 17 years old. They go to spend the day at a neighboring town called Quincy, maybe 20 miles away. So they're going to spend the day there. And that evening, Tina and Sheila, which Sheila is 14, Tina's 12, they're going to go over and watch TV at their neighbors, the Seabolts, in cabin 27, which is literally 15, 20 feet away. So it's very, very close. Almost, not almost, next door, but really, really close, 15 to 20 feet away. And the mom, Sue, told Sheila was going to spend the night there, but Tina didn't have permission to do so, so Tina had to come home. So she got home at about 10 o'clock. She didn't have permission, so she went home. And Sue told her, said, hey, Johnny and Dana are probably going to be coming home pretty soon. So when they come home, let them in. So, and what Johnny and Dana had done, they had hitchhiked back. This was 1981. They'd hitchhiked back to the house. So Tina returned home about 10 o'clock and went to sleep just a few minutes after that. And Sue, they said, went to sleep about 11 o'clock. Well, the next morning, cabin 28, it was just a bloody mess. It was a horrible night, and we're going to get involved in all that of what happened. The next morning, Sheila and the Seabolts are up early. They're getting ready to go to church. So Sheila's having to go back home. It's about 7:45 in the morning to put her church clothes on. So she opens the front door, and she sees a bloody mess. She sees, right as soon as she opens the door in the living room, 3 dead, bloody bodies. They are her mom, Sue, her brother, Johnny, and Johnny's friend, Dana Wingate. So, of course, she runs out screaming and hollering. The Seabolts come out to her, and other people come around. It's a small community. And so the Seabolts, they call the police immediately. Well, the neighbors, of course, they're coming around, and they're looking in the windows. And they saw that the boys were asleep in the bedroom. Okay, you have is Rick and Greg and their friend Justin. Justin has spent the night with them. All 3 of these boys are asleep in the bedroom right next to where the murders took place. So the neighbors open the window and get the boys out through the window, and the boys appeared to be asleep, which was a really good idea. Number one, the boys didn't have to go through there and see this bloody mess to get outside. It did not really contaminate evidence. You didn't have people going in and out of there before the police got there. And more than anything, just, these kids didn't need to see that to go through their mind and for the rest of their life. So they get the boys out, and the police arrive about 15 minutes later, about 8 o'clock, and they secure the area. But the problem was there was a lot of police mistakes on this crime, crime scene. This is 1981. Things were not as good as they are now, but they still made a lot of mistakes. They said literally every deputy had walked in and out, looking at things, checking things out, wasn't sealed off properly, didn't have a log of the scene of who entered it, what time they came in, what time they left, none of that. So evidence is pretty much contaminated at this point. All three of the bodies, hands and feet, were bound by electrical cord and medical tape. Well, now, there had never been medical tape in this cabin, in this house, ever. So the murderer or murderers brought the medical tape with them. So that shows intent. That shows they knew what they were going to do before they got there. Also near the bodies, it was thought to be a pocket knife at first. It was bloody because it was bent. It was actually a steak knife that was bent backwards. It looked like when it was laying there, it bent so much, it looked like a pocket knife that was partially opened. Also, there were stab marks on the walls, on the furniture. They also found a 7-inch butcher knife and a claw hammer both of them covered in blood there in the same room. So they do know that these objects were used as part of the murder. Sue had been gagged with a pair of her own underwear, and her body was covered with a blanket. All three of the victims had been bludgeoned, but with two different types of hammers. You could tell that by the wounds, but only one hammer was found at the crime scene. So we've got a hammer somewhere that was used in this crime that is not at the crime scene. Now, I have a theory of what happened here. This is not fact. This is my theory. I think the murderer or murderers came in and Sue was the intended victim. I think they came in to do harm or kill Sue. I think either after Sue was dead or while the act is taking place, I think that's when the two boys came home and walked in the front door. Remember, they went to Quincy and they had hitchhiked back home. Sue knew they were going to come home. I think they walked in on what had happened, and the murderer or murderers had to take care of them at that point because they're witnesses of the crime. Also, Sue and Johnny had numerous, very, very many amount of stab wounds, while Johnny's friend Dana was beaten and strangled. Now, they're both personal things, stabbing and strangulation. Stabbing is much more personal. It's more violent. It's more grit your teeth while you're doing it. Strangulation is still a personal thing. I personally feel that the murderer or murderers personally knew Johnny and Sue. Definitely, I think they knew Sue. I think they knew Johnny by the way they killed him also. Dana, I think, was just an innocent person, wrong place, wrong time, but he was a witness to this crime also. Now, there were 11 blood samples and 12 bloody fingerprints that were taken as evidence from this crime scene. So they've got tons of evidence. They've got the weapons used, they've got blood, and they have some good bloody fingerprints. That a lot more than you get at a lot of crime scenes. So the police should be really on this. They've got a lot of things to go through and evaluate and put into evidence. And remember, we got the three boys that were asleep in the bedroom right next to where the murder happened that the neighbors had gotten out the door. And that was 5-year-old Greg, 10-year-old Rick, and their friend Justin, who would spend the night with them that night. So, of course, the police are going to question them, what did you hear? What did you see? What do you know? And the boys actually said nothing. They didn't hear anything. They slept all through it. But, however, a little later, Justin said that he dreamed that Sue and Johnny and Dana were killed and that Tina was hauled off by two men. Now remember Tina, we haven't heard about her yet. She's the 12-year-old that was next door in cabin 27 watching television, came home around 10 o'clock and went to bed. Tina is nowhere to be found. It took the police hours to realize that they had a missing person. I read it took as long as almost a full day for them to realize Tina is missing. And that's a big problem. If you have a missing person, you want to be on, especially if you have a scene like this, you want to be on top of it really quick, get the information out where everyone's looking for that person. Almost a full day is what I read that it took for the police to even notice that Tina was gone. Now, Justin said he dreamed this. He described these two men very, very well. He said one had short brown hair and that one had long black hair. He said they both had on jean jackets and one had cowboy boots on and army boots. He said that what he saw, that they attacked Sue and Johnny with hammers. But then he said, wait, this wasn't a dream. I actually saw this. He said after the assault, after what he saw happen, that Tina walked in the room and said, what's going on? Justin said then the two men grabbed Tina and rushed her out the back door. He said then just a minute later, the man with the brown hair walked back in and covered Sue with a blanket. Now, remember, these boys were awakened by neighbors through the window. They were taken out via the window. So there's no way that they should know any of this stuff. When they were taken out, they were taken to another cabin. They wasn't talked to about this by anyone. They didn't have any information. Actually, and Justin had blood on his shoes. And his mother turned these shoes over to the police as evidence. But somehow the police lost the shoes. They could not find them. Now, Justin was a neighbor friend that lived in cabin number 26, just 2 cabins away. He lived there with his mother, Marilyn, and his stepfather, Martin Smart, known as Marty Smart. And in the days after this, the neighbors and people that knew him said that Marilyn and Marty acted really funny, like they had something to hide. Like they said they didn't act normal after this, that something was really up. There was a guy that came to live with the Smarts just a few months before these murders happened. His name was Joe Bowbeed. He was known as Bo. And he was an old friend, a military friend of Marty's. So you got these 3 adults living there with Marilyn's son, Justin. Well, Marilyn and Sue had sort of become friends. And because, they had kids that spent the night with each other. They lived 2 cabins away from each other. And they would go to each other's place and have coffee and talk and start a relationship. Well, Marty didn't like this. He didn't like Marilyn being friends with Sue. So that was just, I don't know why. It's just I don't know if Marty was controlling, but he just didn't want Marilyn to talk to Sue at all. And the night of the murders, Marilyn, Martin, and Bo went to a local bar at around 9 o'clock. Now, from what I gather, it's a lot of cabins together, and just right down the road in walking distance was a little out-of-the-way bar where a lot of the local people just went to there. So those 3 go to the bar. And Martin, they're sitting there at the bar, they're drinking, and Martin said that Bo needed to be fixed up with a woman. So Marilyn said, well, Sue might want to come up here and drink with us. So they walk down to Sue's house and asked her if she wanted to join them. She said, no, I don't want to. I'm staying home. So the 3 go back to the bar. So Marilyn, Marty, and Bo, they go back to the bar. They're sitting there drinking for a couple hours. A little bit before 1, they decide to go home. So they walk back to their cabin 26, and they walk past cabin 28. So they get in there, and after like 15 minutes, Marty and Bo said, well, we want to go back to the bar. So though Marilyn stays home, and Marty and Bo walk back to the bar. They have to walk past cabin 28 to get to the bar. Now, at around 1:15, 1:20 in the morning, a neighbor said that she thought she heard a scream. And at around 2:30 in the morning, another neighbor said that she heard a male and a female voice, and it sounded like they were putting something in a car. About an hour or so after the body was found, you remember police got there at 8 a.m., about 9:30 that morning, a buddy came over to help Martin cut some wood. Now, Buddy said that he found Marty in his backyard burning some debris, and a pair of men's shorts was burning them. This was told to the police. Never anything brought up. I don't even think it was ever addressed. So they finally get around to interviewing Bo, which Bo is the military friend that's staying with Marty. Now, Bo is telling all kinds of lies. Bo said that Marilyn was his niece. They were not related in any way, form, or fashion. Bo said that he was a former police officer. Absolute lie. He had never been a law enforcement officer, never been in law enforcement in any way, form, or fashion. Bo actually said that he did not know Sue when it was an absolute fact that he had met her twice before. So even all these absolute lies, he was never questioned more than that once. They never pushed him on these or called him out on these lies. It was just, they just let it go. And now they get to talk, they're interviewing Marty. Well, Marty was very talkative about the murders. He told police that he heard that a hammer was used in the murders. And he actually told them, said, hey, I'm missing a hammer with a dark blue handle. Went missing a couple of days ago. Just voluntarily saying this stuff. Which that actually matched the hammer that they were looking for at the scene that wasn't there. He was talking about, he said that the murders were overkill, and if it had been him, he would have done it swift. It would have been quick and out the door. Now, why in the world would he be talking about like this of what just happened, and he's just voluntarily bringing all this stuff up? There's a difference between interviewing someone and interrogating someone. Interviewing, you're gathering information. Interrogation, you're pushing. You're really questioning. If they answer something they contradict, you're really pushing that point to call them out on it. There was never interrogation of this part. They just let the man talk about what he wanted to and went on. 2 days after the murders, Bo leaves town and moves to Oregon, where he goes by the name Bobby Lake. The man totally changed his name. I mean, I've never changed my name. Maybe if I murdered someone and was questioned and I moved to another state, maybe then I would want to change my name. But this man just completely changed his name. It was about 3 or 4 years later, I think in 1984, there was a skull and some bones were found about 30 miles away from the cabin. And the police got an anonymous phone call. Said, hey, you need to check those bones out. I think they're the bones of the missing girl, Tina. Well, dental records confirmed that it was Tina Sharp. But police never traced the call. They never did a voice analysis of the person talking. This person that called knew. They knew either who killed him or they were part of it. Or there was no way they would have known that this was Tina Sharp. No follow-up on the phone call ever. It was totally done wrong. It was just totally done wrong. Now, the sheriff at that time and Marty were good friends. Actually, Marty ran through some financial times, some hard times, and lived with the sheriff for 2 to 3 weeks in his house. So they were very good friends. A lot of speculation that this entire case was a police cover-up, that the sheriff directed investigators and deputies to do certain things because almost everything points to Marty and Bo as the two that came in and murdered these people. Now, Justin, the boy who said he saw all this, described them in great detail, really, really good detail. But he never said who they were or if he knew them. You know, if it was Marty and Bo, Well, I'm sure Justin was scared to death. Said, yeah, that's my stepdad and his friend that did this. Maybe he was intimidated. I'm sure he was scared to death to say anything, but he never ever said that that's who it was. I'm not sure if he was ever asked if that's who it was, but he never voluntarily said, yes, that is the people that did it. I'm sure he was scared to death and probably intimidated into what he said. That's all he'll ever say. And not long after the murders, Marty went to some counseling, and he went to a couple of sessions, and then about the fourth session, he walked in. He came in early, was very confident, very calm, and told the therapist, yes, I know all about that. I killed Sue and the boy, but I didn't kill the girl and the other boy. Flat out said he did it. Now, I'm not familiar with the patient-doctor confidentiality thing when it comes to therapists. I'm assuming there are some stipulations, some regulations there. And I don't want to deliberate on that. I don't want to say because I'm not aware of them. But if at all possible, this should have definitely been brought out. I found out that maybe 10 years after that the therapist actually went and told someone, and the police were notified and had that information. Not for sure about that. Now, in 1988, Bo apparently died of natural causes, or Bobby Lake, whatever he is, up in Oregon where he had moved. And in 2000, Martin died and was cremated. You know, there was a lot of evidence at that crime scene, and no one was ever charged. You know, you have blood at the scene. The bloody fingerprints are really the kicker. You know, even in 1980, you could do comparison of fingerprints. From what I saw and what I read, there were some very, very good readable fingerprints. They were never even compared to the two main suspects of this crime, Marty and Bo. Fingerprints were never even compared. You would have had prints on the blanket, on the knives, on the hammer. You would have had all of this. And in the interview, Marty's saying, oh yeah, I had a hammer like that, got missing a few days ago. Well, that point should have been just pounded and pounded and pounded. But it does seem as if there was some type of cover-up. That's my personal opinion. But, you know, police work, it can't be this bad. It almost has to be on purpose. So now you have the two major suspects of the crime. Both are deceased. The sheriff that was there, he has moved off somewhere else and selling insurance. He's not involved in any way. I did hear that there is a website that is actively still posting things about it and any evidence or things coming up. I apologize. I do not know the name of that website. Maybe something like KeedieMurders.org. I think that might be it. If not, that'll get you close to it. My opinion, definitely Marty and Bo committed the crimes. Just a lot of bad police work. I don't think anyone ever will be arrested because I think that's the two that committed the crime, and they're both deceased. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you enjoy this, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Leave me a good review. That'll really help me out. Tell your family and friends. Maybe they'll enjoy it. Many, many more podcasts to come. Please follow me on social media, Instagram and Facebook, Solved or Unsolved. And go check out my website, solvedorunsolved.com. Again, thank you very much for listening.